Hi and welcome to the Tech F1 show. I'm Matt Summerfield, but most people know me as Summers F1. I look at the technical side of the sport and obviously try to make it easier and more accessible to the fans in terms of understanding what the teams change from Grand Prix to Grand Prix. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to produce any of these videos since the last one that I did when I was actually at the last pre-season test, and I did so from my hotel room. Unfortunately, time hasn't permitted, and these videos do take quite some time to put together in terms of getting all the images together, and obviously I produce everything myself. And obviously, without further ado, let's take a look at the updates that the teams used in Barcelona. Okay guys, now so you can see the type of budget I'm working with. I'm just on the laptop, I'm just showing you what the updates are. Apologies for the quality, but at least it will give you an insight into what was changed on the cars for this particular Grand Prix. So starting with the Mercedes, the W06, I've highlighted a few bits on the image just here, which is a great overview of the car from this particular Grand Prix, courtesy of Sutton Images as usual. So if we scroll through, we'll go through the updates piece by piece. The first one here is the front brake duct, and as you can see, there's a new fin that's been mounted to the small inlet that the team used this season. This fin obviously tries to change the airflow structure as it moves across the brake duct. Obviously, this particular inlet wasn't part or didn't feature on the original car design. It was something that was added afterwards. So this fin obviously is there to control the way in which that the airflow that moves across that inlet and doesn't go into the inlet then obviously has an impact further downstream. Without it, obviously, it's a compromise. As I say, the inlet was added, and that it's compromised the original design structure. So obviously what it's trying to do is change the way in which the tyre wake that is shed from the front wheel has an impact further downstream to components like the airflow conditioners, side pod, floor, etc. Moving down the car, we can see here that the team have added a couple of winglets between the monocoque and the barge board. They're sandwiched in between, and those are there to improve the performance of the side pod airflow structures. So obviously it will basically change the way in which that the airflow moves around the undercut, improving the performance of the airflow that moves around there, whilst also changing the way in which that the airflow moves into the side pod inlet. So it improves performance of the frontal area of the side pod itself. Right, okay, this picture that you're seeing now is from Auto, Motor and Sport, or Amos as we call them for short. They're a German publication who obviously frequent the Grand Prix and take some good close-up images of the car as well. Unfortunately, Sutton didn't get a close-up image of this particular part, but I wanted to show it to you anyway. So basically, this is the area just around the rear of the side pod. So obviously, you can see the rear tyre strake just here. Rear tyre will be just here, and basically this was added to improve the cooling into the gearbox area, which is around here. Now, again, it's a compromise. The team won't be happy with having to have made this compromise, I wouldn't have thought. In the post-testing, in-season testing at Barcelona, I believe that this slot was actually lost because the team actually went back to having the roll hoop inlets, which was probably going to do a similar role to the test that this was aimed at doing. But the reason I say that it's a compromise is that although obviously it will entice airflow into the duct there, which is only a minor duct in the bodywork, what they won't like is the separation that it may cause in this particular area, especially as it's quite key, that area, in terms of flowing towards the Coke bottle and then obviously producing downforce in line with the diffuser. Moving a little bit further back down the car, the team also added a couple of extra winglets on the side of the crash structure. It's something that the team have done with the W05 in the past, but they were mounted much lower on the crash structure, whereas these are obviously aimed at influencing the exhaust plume and the way that interacts between the diffuser and the rear wing, having lost the beam wing in 2014. Now, these particular winglets are very similar to the beam wing slice that we used to see on the RB10, in as much as the way in which it's positioned. I certainly think it's something that obviously is more designed in terms of creating downforce for higher downforce configuration circuits, and is something that we might see their monkey seat mounted on, or their Y100 winglet mounted on, come the Monaco Grand Prix, because obviously they're now with the single centerline pylon rather than the twin one, which their old seat used to mount off of. They actually lost one of those big monkey seats at the one of the pre-season tests when they tried it in Barcelona. So in terms of a mounting point, they may use these crash structure winglets to mount the monkey seat off of. Moving on to Ferrari, and obviously they had a raft of upgrades available to them for the Spanish Grand Prix. This was the first real time that we've seen an upgrade package developed by the Scuderia for 2015. So, as it's a mass version of an update, I've produced this overhead image which shows predominantly the updates that we've seen from the team for Barcelona. But we will scroll through the bigger images just so that you can see exactly what was changed. So first of all, we've got the front brake duct. Now there's a couple of changes on the front brake duct itself, one of which is to do with cooling. Well, not with cooling, but the way in which airflow is taken in by the inlet and then dispatched out through the wheel face. So what we've got here is what we call a crossover pipe, and the crossover pipe takes air through the inlet and it dispatches it out of the wheel face. Now that crossover pipe is usually a little shorter on the SW15T, in terms of vertical height anyway. It's usually a little bit smaller. Now that obviously is an area in which the team are trying to key developments towards changing front wing structure. So obviously the way in which the team are using a blown axle this season is to change the way in which that the tyre wake, as the tyre revolves, it creates a wake that will have a performance problem to the rest of the car. So obviously what they've done with having the blown axle, which the cover's just here at the moment, but basically the airflow comes out through the blown axle and it changes the direction of the wake that's been induced. This particular crossover pipe will also change the way in which the blown axle works, as it blows air out through the wheel face. And obviously all of these structures are designed to work in line with the front wing as well. And the reason that Ferrari opted for the blown axle concept is so that they didn't have to be so aggressive with the outturning of their front wing, unlike some of the other teams. The other change to the brake duct is this fin that's been added just here, and it actually reaches a little bit further back. You can't see it in this picture particularly well, but basically it reaches back along the back of the face of the brake duct just here, and basically that's designed to change the way in which the airflow moves around the inboard side of the brake duct and front wheel, and change again the wake and the way in which obviously the side pod is affected by that. Okay, so here we're seeing the new and old version of the barge boards. They're very similar in design in terms of shape and geometry, but what we've actually got is two slots added to the barge board to increase their efficiency and change their angle of attack effectively, increasing their performance window. So we've got one slot just here, you should be able to see in the image, and another slot at the back there. So we've got leading and trailing edge slots. Okay, so the biggest change perhaps to the SF15T was the side pods. I've already spoken throughout the first part of this season on the various sites that I write for about the innovative side pod and radiator configuration that
Ferrari have opted to run this season in terms of the airflow conditioning items that are within the side pod itself. But what that has obviously meant is that the side pod can be made smaller, because the radiator doesn't require the maximum airflow that the side pod was originally designed for. So as we can see, I've marked here in yellow the actual periphery of the side pod itself, and as you can see, the shoulder has changed dramatically in terms of its shape, which will obviously have an impact on not only the side pod and the way that that controls airflow, but also, if we notice, the amount of wheel that is now, or rear tyre that is now visible. It changes the way in which the rear wheel wake also forms at the rear of the car, which should have an impact in terms of performance. Obviously, because of the change of shape to the side pod itself, there's also been changes to the airflow conditioner, which now arches over and meets with this section of the side pod as obviously it changes geometric shape, and also the cockpit fin, which was previously part of the airflow conditioner and is now marked in green on this picture, has now got its own cockpit fin, which obviously takes up the rest of the space along the top edge of the side pod. Has a little kink on the top edge here as well, which again is designed to improve the performance of the downwash over the side pod and also the wake at the rear of the car. Here's another picture of the side pod itself, just so that we can see the way in which the surface has changed. Previously, obviously, we had a bigger arc at the front edge here, whereas now the actual shoulder completely drops away and allows airflow to come across here. At the rear of the side pod, a bit like Mercedes, they were trying to improve the performance of the car in general. So they've added this little winglet onto the side of the side pod, and now that creates a pressure gradient. So obviously you build high pressure into this section, which will of course obviously flip the air upwards, but also what it does is create a low pressure region behind. So you create a turbulent region, a vortex basically, that will then increase the performance of the airflow in that region and help to bring the airflow in and around the Coke bottle region. A nice little touch from Ferrari, I believe. I know it only seems like a small winglet, but something that we haven't seen before, and it's quite impressive that the team are pushing the regulations in terms of where they can place these small winglets. Right, at the rear of the side pod, obviously, they needed to change the performance as well. So we've also got some changes at the rear in terms of geometry. As we can see, I've marked in yellow the areas that have been changed, and what that does is it lifts the side pod outlet upwards, allowing the air to flow more smoothly around into the Coke bottle area, giving a maximum amount of flow space into the rear of the car. Again, it's all down to the way in which that the team are able to run less or smaller cooling ducts because of the type of side pod and configuration they run, along with the type of radiator configuration they're running on this car. Right, moving down the car slightly, we've got the overhead view of the tyre squirt ducts. So Ferrari have been using the dog or L-shaped duct, slots that pretty much all the teams now run. But what they've added to that is a couple of slots ahead of that. And the reason that teams use these particular slots in the floor is to help with what we call tyre squirt. So what happens when the tyre deforms, it laterally pushes airflow into the path of the diffuser, which obviously then closes down the amount of space that is viable to create downforce within. So what these slots actually do is they change the airflow structure, and they change the way in which that the airflow moves across the floor space. So when the tyre does deform, it doesn't impinge on the diffuser performance as much. It will try to straighten the airflow outwards, increasing the expansion area that the diffuser can work within. Moving slightly further down the car again, we've got the new rear brake ducts. These were changed in two areas, but the first area is that originally we had a singular section to the upper fin just here, which is now a dual element, and the angle of attack has also changed because obviously we've got a two-piece. It allows the angle of attack to be changed because you can now effectively garner more airflow over that region. At the rear of the brake duct, we've also lost the vertical fin that runs on the inbound section, so it's not available on the new section, and that's all to do with the change further up ahead, and the way in which the airflow now needs to move around the brake ducts and improve the upwash. Again, something else that we can see as an innovation in terms of we've not seen this before from any of the teams. Ferrari have mounted a couple of extra winglets in the outer section of the diffuser, and basically those are mounted off of the support bracket that supports the detached gurney, which is the gurney runs around the top edge of the diffuser to improve diffuser performance. So yeah, they've added these little winglets, and they'll obviously support the performance of the brake duct, but also this create a better operating window for the diffuser itself, which is obviously a skewed performance based on the angle of attack that you have with the diffuser. So the inner section has a much higher angle of attack than the outer section. Again, another close-up of those winglets. As we can see, they are mounted on the diffuser gurney support, and as I say, they're there to help improve the outer upwash. Moving on to Williams, and as we can see from this particular image, the team have made some minor changes to the leading edge of their side pod to try and improve the operating window of the side pod. I've marked them in yellow just here. Is the two vortex generators that have been added. The one on the outside here has been on the FW37 since the opening round of the season, but obviously they're looking to improve performance, and they're going to do that periodically over the next few Grand Prix. They've also changed the shape a number of fins alongside on the cockpit just here. We've now got a triangular vane rather than the twin vane that used to be mounted to the side of the cockpit. Again, obviously trying to change the performance window of the side pod. Moving on to Red Bull, and there was much talk about this shorter nose that Red Bull had been developing, and the way in which that they needed to get this particular nose through the crash structures. Apparently it took them 4 attempts to get through the crash structure. Such was the aggressive design of the nose. It is very reminiscent of the smaller team Toro Rosso's nose, but obviously there are some geometric changes in terms of shape because of the way in which the Red Bull will have their monocoque chain design different to the Toro Rosso team. So you can't have a direct comparison. It is very similar in terms of design, but in terms of the geometric shapes, and perhaps the other thing that Red Bull were trying to keep down is weight, because obviously when you're trying to get these noses through the crash test, if you're going for a longer nose, you don't have to decelerate the nose over such a short period as you do with this nose. So you end up having to add weight into this nose to make it past the crash test. It's just part and parcel of the way in which the crash tests work, and obviously decelerating the loads. So what's changed on this particular noses is the fact that they've tried to get the nose much shorter, which means that the pylons themselves are more leant back and are much longer than the old style ones. This has also changed the angle of attack of the underside of the nose, and obviously because you've increased the height of the pylons and obviously this angle just here, you will get more flow in underneath the nose. But that isn't really the real reason why they wanted to make this change. The real reason as we look back at the old style. So we flick between the two, you can see the difference in terms of the length of the thumb section, and obviously the angle of attack here and the angle of attack on the upper surface. But this picture here that I drew of the two noses really shows what Red Bull were trying to achieve, and that is to change the way in which the nose interacts with the central section of the front wing, which is the neutral section that all teams have to have a design of a very similar property. So what they're trying to do is obviously move the nose and everything as far back along this central section as they possibly can, to obviously influence that section differently compared to the old nose design. Right, moving on to the Toro Rosso team, little brother of Red Bull, and they introduced a new area to the rear tyre deck. So as we can see, they've been running these vertical tyre strakes for some time now, but what they've done is they've introduced the L-shaped or dog-legged tyre squirt slot. But ahead of that, like Ferrari with the one that I've just explained, they've added 2 slots ahead of their dog leg. Toro Rosso have also added another slot just ahead, and it's very much shaped like a dog leg as well. This section here is a little raised, and like Ferrari, it's doing exactly the same type of job. It's trying to mitigate the losses between the deformation of the side wall of the tyre and the way that will squirt airflow into the diffuser, and trying to widen the operating window of the diffuser itself. Moving on to Lotus lastly, and they had a minor update for the Barcelona Grand Prix that they didn't actually race, and that is the leading edge slot just here that a lot of the teams have used for quite some time now in Formula One, and basically that is to help use the airflow that's dissipated by the front wheel, and this leading edge improves the performance of the end plate. But not only the end plate, it also in yaw will improve the performance of the main plane and the top flap too. As you can see on this picture, this is from the post test anyway. The team also introduced a new monkey seat, or Y150 winglet, and here from the rear you can see it's a 2-element top section and a 2-element rear bottom section, which is different to the one that we've seen before, and I believe that this is a pre-test for the team, using that specification for Monaco basically to improve the performance envelope of the car in its entirety.
Right, that's it for this episode of the Tech F1 show. Obviously, if you want to keep up to date with everything that's going on the technical side of the sport, you can follow me over on Twitter at SummersF1, or you can follow my blog, which is www.summersf1.co.uk.